Hello, everyone. I'm Yasmin Taj, editor, ETHRWorld International and head of branded content for the Economic Times. And with great pleasure, I welcome you all to this exclusive episode of the video interview series brought to you by ETHRWorld Southeast Asia in collaboration with Enparadigm on the theme Talent Management and Development for the Future of Work. The past 3 years saw an elevated need for leaders to start assessing their talent functions and adopt a solution-focused approach with respect to all three, work, workplace, and the workforce. With a deeper understanding to connect with people and processes, and with a mission to become more resilient, sustainable, and human-centric, organizations have come a long way and will continue to shift in the coming years as well. To learn more about the shifting talent trends, emerging challenges in the talent management space, and the newfound expectations of the hybrid talent when it comes to their career trajectories, we have partnered with Enparadigm for this exclusive video interview series on the topic Talent Management and Development for the Future of Work. And for today's episode, it's our pleasure to have with us Surya Rai, Regional HR Director at Reckitt, and John Cherian, CEO of Enparadigm. Thanks, Surya and John, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. And before we continue with the session, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Surya and John. With 2 decades of rich experience in working with HR across Asia, Surya currently serves as the Regional HR Director for ASEAN and Greater China at Reckitt. Born and raised in Kolkata, India, Surya is known for being a business-focused, passionate, and conscientious HR leader with a strong mix of strategic and operational experience. He is also a strong advocate of diversity and inclusion. And our second speaker for the day is John Cherian, who's CEO of Enparadigm, who continues to make the complex simple with his belief in the power of learning at Enparadigm, a journey that brings together business thought, learning methodology, and user experience into our technology-driven learning platforms. The understanding of unconscious competence and how to help businesses get there is his field of permanent study. So without further ado, let me invite both Surya and John to share some very exciting insights and views on the topic for today, which is, again, talent management and development for the future of work. So Surya, I'd like to come to you first. You've been working in this industry for pretty long now. What are some of the top trends that you've seen, especially in the past 2 years and now coming up in 2023 in the L&D space? And how do you think has the role of L&D become more critical in uplifting the talent development function today?
So first of all, thank you, Yasmin. It's a pleasure and honor to be speaking to you. So hello to all the viewers. I think to answer your question on criticality of learning and development as part of talent management, it was always critical. And I think with the new world that we are experiencing post-COVID, it has become even more important. Exactly. I think the learning solutions need to be much more agile in today's world. They need to take care of bite-sized learning, just-in-time learning, on-the-job learning. And I would also emphasize that technology is changing that space as we speak, right? With all the solutions that we have with the latest technology, I think we can do a lot more than we could do in the past, right? And it has evolved in the post-COVID era, where now talent assessment, could happen on the screen virtually when you are interviewing a candidate, or you are doing a group assessment, or you are doing a learning session. Even looking at facial expression, some of the companies I have seen using technology and AI, even doing some psychological analysis, live in a virtual session, which was not possible, some time ago. So to summarize, I would say, the focus would continue to be away from long 8 hours classroom learning that we used to experience in the past. It would be more on just-in-time, on-the-job, bite-sized learning, and content is no more the king. Everyone has access to the world's content in different social media platforms, and the best is out there. So it's more about how do we make the content relevant for the people who need it when they need it, and not make a fuss about it. Also, I would say that the leader's job or manager's job of coaching and leaders growing leaders, we are experiencing is becoming even more important in the new world, because there's less face-to-face connection, and therefore things like inclusion, coaching, with empathy and emotional intelligence is becoming even more important in today's world.
Yes. Great point, Surya. I think I totally agree with you that the whole learning, the world of learning has changed. It has become so agile. It's anytime, anywhere. It's what when and where people want to learn, how they want to learn. You cannot force down those traditional archaic ways of learning onto them anymore. It's very technology driven, very bite sized, very mobile. It's everything. It's democratized, if I may say. John, what about you and your experience in working with organizations? What trends have you seen come through, especially this year?
Yes, I fully agreed with Surya on the points that he mentioned. I think two key objectives for L&D, right? One has always been to help the business stay sustainable, right? So as the employees go through their employee life cycle, as people move in and out of the organization or move into different roles,
Yes.
how does learning help people deliver in those roles? How does it help make people have those critical skills they need to perform in those roles, right? That was always a very important aspect of learning. The other aspect was that of helping the organization innovate, helping it break new ground, get into new areas, right? I think that has been the other critical area that learning has played a key role, right? With the kind of disruption that we are seeing today, a lot of these roles, both these roles seem to have intertwined today,
Yeah.
right? Just staying sustainable itself requires a lot of agility. It requires managing a lot of different disruptions, constantly innovating in new areas. So the learning function has to respond to these needs and these trends that we see today.
Interestingly, that's how the learning function has become a partner to business, right? It's about understanding what the business needs and preparing it for the future by having the requisite skills in place, ensuring that you create a workforce that is ready and agile to change with the way the world is changing. I think that's very important. So great points again. Thanks for sharing that, John. Coming back to you, Surya, in the talent development function is evolving day on day, right? That's what we are seeing, but there are challenges along the way as well. What have been some of the emerging challenges that you have seen, especially in terms of creating that learning culture or having that mindset? What challenges are you seeing in that?
I think one of the challenges is always how do we get a set of great role model line managers who model the learning behavior, right? And therefore inspire the team and the people to continue to evolve, right? That is I think one challenge. And this whole hybrid work environment has made people more busy, and therefore there are less opportunities for interaction, which used to be very much part of the water cooler conversations, 1 minute coaching, which used to be very powerful. I think how do we not lose some of that going forward is important. Also, I think there is a lot of great options and solutions developing in our ecosystem. Gone are those days that the company has to put a lot of infrastructure itself in developing learning solutions. There is a lot that's developing and emerging. How do we make best use of the latest and the best? That also is something that each of us have to always be watchful about.
Yeah.
And then I would also say that the real learning, I still believe, happens on the job. So how do we make sure that on the job experience based learning is something that's put right in front and center, because ultimately the business needs have to be met, and there are certain critical skills and experiences that we need to build both from a function competency point of view and also the business need point of view, right? And also leadership development cannot be ignored, and mix that with the need for resilience, the future proofing, because even though the what may not change of an industry, the how is changing very fast.
Absolutely.
Technology is disrupting it, every few months, if not years, right? And how do we stay abreast with that will be very important. So fully leveraging your ecosystem, empowering and enabling the line managers to continue to play a very critical role in on-the-job development through coaching, and then having the right infrastructure, right, within the company as well as outside, and leveraging that will be, I think, very important.
Yes, I think these are some interesting challenges. If you do not have the right culture built through your line managers, if you don't have that advocacy happening when it comes to creating that learning, agility and that learning culture, then that shakes the whole foundation of your learning. So having the right infrastructure, as you said, having the right kind of line managers to enable that kind of on the job and on the go learning by doing, that's going to be very important for companies to move forward. John, what are your thoughts on some challenges, some critical areas or shifts that the whole learning function is going through right now?
I think with a hybrid work environment, like Surya mentioned, the water cooler conversations are far more tough to have, right? And that definitely has an impact in terms of culture, right? Who am I? What am I doing here? Why am I working here? The answers to these questions are probably a lot tougher for people today than what they were earlier, right? So being able to give people a sense of purpose becomes very important. So one, the environment itself has changed. There's a lot more fragmentation in the environment today. Everything is fragmented, right? Your beliefs, the customer segments, the kind of time that people have to do different things. Everything is fragmented, and we really are in an economy where attention is really the key currency, right? The currency is attention; it's not money anymore, right? So how do you keep attention on, right? How do you give people that sense of purpose? How do you focus them on certain organizational outcomes that you want to achieve? All these are challenges today.
Yeah,
right?
true.
And the L&D function definitely plays a critical role in bringing in cohesion, bringing in purpose, bringing in that sense of ownership and outcome-driven approach to work.
Yeah, I think I do agree. I think having that relevance in learning and keeping it a very engaging experience, I think that the learning experience, if I may term it, is very important when it comes to building that culture of learning overall. Because if you can't engage, I think people drop off. There's no on-the-job application of what you've learned so far. And then it just becomes a push-down approach. I think very key points there. So thanks for sharing that. Surya, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the learning initiatives that you have taken at your organization and that has especially made your workplace more inclusive and something that is aligned with the newfound expectations of a more diverse and hybrid workforce?
So I think it's a great question. So first of all, building on the points that John was earlier mentioning, we are trying to get away from a push-based model, right? So for mandatory compliance trainings, yes, of course, we have to get it done because that's a requirement of the law, compliance, or business conduct, and those things we did get done on a mandatory basis.
Yeah.
But for anything to do with the job or competency related to the job or career or leadership development, we are really following the principle of adult learning theory, which is about on the job, just in time, and we are trying to also inculcate a growth mindset across the region. So we have held a lot of sessions to prime our organization towards growth mindset, and that creates the right environment where people are more receptive to get inspired about their learning. And the inspiration doesn't have to be in the form of a classroom learning. It can be from a best case sharing from another colleague or another group or team, right? It can also be visiting a market and learning from a customer, right? So there are various ways in which we can inculcate learning, and we are trying to experiment in that space, and it has really worked very well for us. We have also created a stream of storytelling sessions where people can come, without judgment, share their stories of growth when they had a challenge and how growth mindset helped them overcome some of the challenges. Some of those stories are business related, some of them are deeply personal. It kills many stones with that, in terms of building community, building learning culture, building inspiration for each other, right? And also the old traditional mindset that only people with experience or the highest salary in the room know the most, and therefore we have to look up to our 1-up or 2-up or 3-up managers for learning, is no more true. So it can come from anywhere, anyone. And that's what we are trying to do. In terms of employees, we have to also look at offering solutions that are total employee centric. How do we enhance their resilience? How do we enhance their focus? How do we enhance their well-being? Also, how do we create a culture where there is inclusion at workplace, right? So that people have a feeling of belonging. And we have done some initiatives around that by launching content, modules around conscious inclusion, which looks at unconscious things like unconscious bias, micro messaging, etc. And that has been very well received by people. And within the employee groups, I think you can customize it for different groups. That also is actually very important based on which function, what stage of their career they are in, and therefore what the needs are, versus offering same thing to everybody, which doesn't work anymore, right? So hope that answers your question. A long answer, but
I think it made a lot of sense, because it's about what I hear from you is it's a lot about peer-to-peer learning. It's about learning from stories around you. It's about personalization. It's about that experience. It's about learning on the job, as you said again. So that's how overall, even I think as an organization, Reckitt is focusing on, where you build that culture from the bottom, where people are happy to learn, where there's this learning agility within them, where the culture is such that people get encouraged to learn, empowered to learn, and not forced to learn. I think that is most important here. John, I'd like to come to you next and talk to you about, we need to solidify the whole learning infrastructure, especially in the existing talent pool that we have. How can that be done, especially? And how can the learning team consistently get inputs from the business on what's working, what's not working, and align this whole thing together to build the whole learning, set up for them?
Yes, as we heard from Surya, the days of one shop fits all learning is over. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The art today is learning, which is very business relevant, role specific, and very relevant to the capabilities you need in your role, in your future roles, and also to the kind of proficiency levels that you're already exhibiting, right? So how does learning infrastructure deliver that? I think that becomes very critical, right? The second piece is that of learning being very experiential and immersive and what I call true to life, right? How do we ensure learning becomes true to life so that when people go back from the learning experience, they don't experience a dissonance between what they've gone through in the learning environment and what they're facing at work. Right?
Yeah.
Many times in learning environments, things are very neat and clean, and very nicely boxed, right? Whereas the real world becomes very messy, right? And there's nothing clean and simple there, right? Everything is ambiguous.
Right.
There are no, 100% right answers. A lot of things are going to be judgment calls, right? So how can we ensure learning environments also replicate that kind of a realistic way of, learning itself, right? So that becomes very important, right?
Yeah.
The other aspect I would like to speak about is that of, how do you make learning available to people at the point in time of usage, right? That when I need to achieve something, am I able to find the learning that I need? And as an organization, are we also able to build that curiosity and that hunger for learning, where people have learned how to learn, right? And they have learned how to look for learning and find it, and that becomes part of the cultural fabric of the organization, right? So learning infrastructure is probably a summation of all of these things put together.
Great points, I think, John. I think when you started by saying that, first of all, how relevant is learning, how contextual it is, what you've learned and the environment, in the learning environment, how different does it become when you come back to your job? How are those two aligned? Very important points for people to ponder over when they're creating those learning programs, how personalized it is, and how do you make learning available to people just in time, anytime, whenever they want to pick up the phone or log onto the laptops and learn in whichever way they want to. I think that's going to be a good way of solidifying the whole infrastructure, because people can then feel empowered and they don't feel forced. They feel empowered to learn whenever they want to learn and how they can learn. So great points there. Anything you'd like to add to that, Surya, before we move on to our next question?
No, I think John covered it very well. The only thing I would say is that with the hybrid work, now we don't have to assume that everybody would come to a classroom setup and learn. Whenever we are offering a solution, we should think about colleagues who could join online and make that option available. And the experience equally good and equally engaging. And it is a science and art. Some of it can be built in the infrastructure with IT and support, but some of it is also in the art of facilitation, the teaching techniques, the communication involved, right? And how do you keep the audience engaged if you're doing a classroom kind of learning, and make it experience-based so that people really take it on the job. Otherwise, any learning is lost, right? It's lost time, loss of resource, and you can't, expect much impact of that learning.
Yeah, it's all about having a blended approach to learning. I think a mix of everything and then making it relevant and seeing how it works for each individual in the organization. So thanks
Right.
for sharing that, Surya. Coming to the final question that we have, Surya, there are a number of skills that are very relevant today. But if I had to ask you to pick the top 3 skills that you think will power the future of work, what would those be?
I think the first one, I think that is still relevant, and it was always relevant, is emotional intelligence from a leadership perspective.
Yes.
And it covers, a breadth of things like, self-awareness, communication with empathy, leading with emotional intelligence of people and groups, right? In various ways, like across countries, across cultures, across mediums of communication. It's no more just a face-to-face town hall. Leaders have to adjust their camera so that they're reachable to people sitting, far away from them, and they're landing well in terms of their key messages to the people. Ability to respond to questions online versus offline. So I think all of that, I bracket that as an emotional intelligence piece. Second one, I would say, is the area of engagement. I think no more engagement is the word. It's about inspiration. So I think John touched upon it a little bit. How do we bring purpose to work?
Yeah.
And the why part of the why, what, how equation is extremely important, right? And if that is clear to people, I think they can jump off a cliff, for a team or for an organization. So and therefore the companies that have that why very clear
Yeah.
in the minds of employees will have an edge,
Indeed.
right? And the third one is, I think, the talent, to value. For example, when you are staffing for a role or developing a person for a role, how do you make sure that the business critical skills required in that job, from adequacy of experience, skill set, resourcing, is done well, so that the value agenda that you have from that role is fully captured. Otherwise, there could be a lot of losses, and without you realizing, and a lot of learning could have a very soft impact versus really capturing the value for the business. So hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. No, I think those are some great, very unique skills that you pointed out. I think because I know multiple interactions we've seen, but I think they're very, very important and interesting. John, what about you? Top 3 skills from your side, and do you agree to what Surya has said?
Yeah, so I think what Surya called emotional intelligence, I'm going to call that empathy.
Yeah.
Sounds very similar, except that from an application perspective, I wouldn't want people to see it only as for their co-workers, right? It's about looking at people, everyone around you as your internal and external customers, and showing that empathy for them in terms of understanding their lives, their worldview, their needs, and then solutioning for them.
Yes.
Right? So that's what I would call customer empathy. So that becomes a very critical skill. And the better you can do that, the more relevant you are in someone else's lives.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore you are better in business. Right?
Excellent. Very
So
good.
that's number one, right? Number two is in terms of your ability to, with the world around us going a lot more digital, so much of data comes in, but most of the time you're lost in terms of what do I do with this data, right? And you're overwhelmed with data, right? So being able to zoom out, have your hypothesis, being able to look at data, analyze it, create insights,
Totally.
and therefore come out with action items or decisions, right? And being able to look at it very critically. I think that becomes very, very important. Right?
I love what he's saying. Every data is not a piece of insight,
So,
and how leaders remain decisive, I think, is very important.
yeah,
Absolutely agree. Yes.
maybe zoom out and then retain that clarity, as an organization employee, right? And be able to transfer that clarity then to people around you. That becomes very important.
Yeah.
Right? The third piece that I would like to take on is, being able to understand and figure out areas of application for all the AI that is coming out today. Right? There is a huge amount of AI that's coming, and it's a new area for most organizations. So anyone who masters it quickly will have a competitive edge, at least for a short period of time. Right?
Yeah.
Being able to understand AI in a very simple way, being able to understand the application areas, being able to bring that into the value chain of the business. I think that becomes again a very critical skill today.
Yeah, and we're seeing the use of AI becoming very increasingly important recent times, especially, I think, and people are learning to let go of the mundane tasks by using automation and AI and focus on the more creative and more imaginative tasks that they can use their brains for. So that's going to be important. But thank you so much for sharing that. I think very interesting skill sets coming up. I think some of them are very foundational. Everything needs to have. Some of them are things that have to be built upon. But I think learning leaders, organizations have to focus on how they're building that upon. So thanks for sharing that, Surya and John. That was all the time we had for this episode, but there was so much to learn from the both of you. I think overall what I could come out from this conversation is that the learning environment has changed, has evolved. The L&D function has evolved a lot. When it comes to talent, you have to create that kind of a learning experience for them, which is relevant, which is personalized, which helps them apply their learnings on the job, which helps them learn anywhere, anytime, and which overall aligns their purpose to the purpose of the business. So that's how the learning function is going to go away in the future. So thanks for sharing these insights with us. It was a great conversation. And thank you for joining us, Surya and John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Surya.
Thank you. And for everyone else who's joined us here, thank you so much for watching this episode. Do stay tuned with more, for more such episodes, and log on to our website and follow the hashtag Learn to Lead to see this series. You can also find the link in the description below. Till then, take care and stay tuned, everyone. Bye-bye.